my producer just sold me out. Just made me look like a jerk. Besides the picture in the back falling down. Hey, we're here with the 562 Mike Guardasbacio and JJ Fiddler. We're here to talk about sports. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about what we're not getting, but for the most part, we're just going to talk about sports and what's happening. I'm actually doing this for the first time from my house. I've hired several small children to run through and make it adorable. So we'll be doing that later, too.
I really love the crown molding, Steve. It's good to it's nice to get the inside view, and you can see here in our home office. It's so tucked onto the side of the house that it actually the ceiling gets lower for building codes over there.
I was gonna say, are you in a Quonset hut there? And I like the light fixture. Are you digging the popcorn?
Yes, it's great. Yeah, you've got the old school ceiling there for sure.
Good for acoustics. Now, talking about aesthetics. I know we want to talk about Long Beach State and Long Beach High School sports, but the number one thing I got to talk about. New Ram uniforms. They just came out a couple days ago. I think they're hideous. Colin Cowherd loves them. I'm finding I agree far, far less with Colin Cowherd these days. What you guys think?
Yeah, not a fan. I will go on record saying that orange is a horrible color, but a close second is trying to make blue and yellow look good. It just doesn't work.
Not that blue and yellow.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I'll just since we're on a video platform here, I'm just gonna put this up.
Yes, thank you, buddy.
This is the Best Buy Los Angeles Rams customer service uniform that they've chosen to adopt here.
Yeah, you know what it looks like to me? It looks like that's about the second draft of the uniform. Like, and then they forgot about it and like, oh crap, well here, let's just put this up. It doesn't look quite done or finished.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
I don't really understand rebranding in sports in general. Of course, I'm a Dodger fan, a Laker fan. You know what I mean? Like, I like my old school stuff. I want to look like my dad and mom and the people who taught me to root for that team. Right. I don't want the new stuff. So I just don't like it in general. I like the way the European leagues do it, right? They have a home kit, an away kit, and then every year they give you an alternate. It's like the powder blues for the Chargers. Those are like by far my favorite uniform.
Has a team screwed up the opportunity more than the Rams? 2 years ago, they're in the Super Bowl, and you're like, wow, they are so far ahead of the Chargers. They already own this town. When they move into the new place, no contest. Since then, they've had they had a horrible Super Bowl, like the most boring Super Bowl ever. Then they had a horrible last season. Then whatever they're doing with Todd Gurley right now. And then just over the last couple weeks, the Chargers come out with probably the best uniforms, and the Rams have the worst uniforms. And now it feels like they're at a flat foot tie again to see who gets the heart of the city.
Yeah, except neither of them will get the heart of the city anyway. I mean, in my opinion, right? Like, it's LA. You're still the best team will still have the most fans here, and they don't necessarily have to be based here. There'll always be a ton of Raiders fans and Niners fans and Cowboys fans. I know way more Cowboys fans in Southern California, including our mutual friend Jason, than I do, than I do Rams fans or Chargers fans. And I don't know. I mean, it's a Lakers, Dodgers, USC football, UCLA basketball town, and everyone loves football. But USC football will be the pro football team of Southern Californians' choice for a long time, in my opinion. Because you said it, no one cares about the Chargers or the Rams if they suck. And while attendance might go down for USC football, people at least are mad about it. No one cares that the Chargers suck. That didn't affect anyone's day, Hey, I do want to throw out, while you're talking about logo redesigns, a couple we actually have from Long Beach, a Wilson High graduate named Stevens Wright was one of the best NFL design guys ever. He designed the Bills logo, which is, I think, the second longest continuously used logo in the NFL. He also designed the old Patriots logo that had the Minuteman doing the hike. Yeah. He drew that one as well.
Dang.
So, yeah, and it just lifelong Long Beach resident. He went to Wilson. His wife went to Poly. She was a accounts executive for the NFL. Was how he got the gig designing logos. And he got paid as a freelancer. So he got paid like $70 to design that Bills logo.
That they've made billions off.
That's been used for 50 years now or whatever, right? And then meanwhile, the Rams probably paid some firm $200 million to screw up their their look,
Well, that's the thing is that, like you were mentioning, JJ, like the Dodgers and the Lakers will never change. They are iconic brands. But I can tell you, when I was growing up here in the 60s, that Ram helmet was as iconic as anything. It's weird to me that they wouldn't go back to it to say, hey, we're the same old Rams. They seem to be trying to separate themselves from that history. And it was a pretty good history.
Yeah, it was a great history. They also are trying to sell merchandise, right? Like, isn't that the
Yeah.
idea of a rebrand, is to give
Yeah.
people more stuff to buy? So if they're doing that, I guess they succeeded, but I don't know who's going to buy it. I know a couple Rams fans who are like, no, I'm good.
We have a good friend of ours who's a Rams, who wanted to become a Rams fan when they moved to Southern California, because he was like, I want a team to root for. The players I used to love on different teams have all retired. And yeah, like you said, they came out here, they get to the Super Bowl. Everyone loves Sean McVay. Our friend's all on board, and he's already just like, whatever. Like, I'll just watch the Chiefs,
Right. You got choices. Hey, I wanted to ask you guys, you mentioned how really the de facto professional team in town is USC when they're good. And we've heard these stories now that they are starting to, as they say, kind of wall off LA and Southern California to keep the players in. If you can keep Southern California players at home, you will be one of the top 5 teams in the country. That's just a fact. What are you guys hearing at all from local either coaches or top players about any kind of shift in USC's recruiting approach or anything like that?
They're just not in the mix right now on a national level. I mean, they really they really screwed themselves up by letting Ed Orgeron go because they felt like the boosters wouldn't like his voice. But Coach O was the Long Beach guy for Pete Carroll. I mean, he had a back gate key to Poly High School. If you ask any of those guys Coach O stories, I mean, he lived in Long Beach, and what made him popular and what got them all that talent was he liked going to North Long Beach and to Central Long Beach and the West Side. Because he was from areas like that, obviously in a more rural setting in Louisiana. And frankly, they haven't really recruited the inner city well since he left, I mean, and if you look at it now, all of the top kids, we have the top 2 quarterbacks in the country at Bosco and Mater Dei last year, and they went to Clemson and Alabama. I mean, USC wasn't even in the mix, at the end of it. So, no, I think they've got a lot of work to do, but it's just they've got to rebuild their brand and the trust in the inner city communities that they're invested in those communities as coaches and not just kind of looking to pick off players here and there.
Can you imagine Coach O in your living room? Like, how do you not go wherever that guy?
Do you want to like sign a lease with me? Do you
Right.
Do you want my car? Like, what can I do for you, Coach?
Go ahead.
I think it's crazy because Mike's right. That is the narrative that USC thought that their boosters wouldn't like Coach O. I think that's just a huge excuse because they wanted the other guy and they just had to make a reason why they weren't going to take Coach O. Because if you win ball games, who cares what your voice sounds like?
But they wanted the CEO. They felt like the brand wins the ball games. We want the guy. We just had this embarrassing thing with Steve Sarkisian being drunk at all these donor events. We don't want the guy who coming in here sounds like a cartoon frog. Like we want the necktie, executive or whatever. And we've talked to Clay a couple of times. He's a nice guy and everything, but you had a dude who just everyone in Southern California wanted to play, and you let him get away, and now he's a national champion.
It's funny. How is it that every time someone says Clay Helton is a nice guy, it sounds like the absolute most damning thing that they can say about the guy?
Who's a great football coach that's a nice guy?
That's a very good point.
I mean, we have some in Long Beach, and it just at the end of the day, even I would say the nicest football coach we ever covered, maybe Raul Lara, who won a record 5 Division I CIF championships at Poly. And he was a really nice guy, very religious guy, still a nice guy. We've stayed in touch. But you get him on a football field and he wanted to rip your intestines out through your chest. I mean, you know what I mean? And I just don't really see that from, from Clay Helton. I don't know. Raul Lara is a 5'10" guy who would have these 6'3" linemen at Poly, just like, whatever you say, coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, speaking of high school football, where are we at? I mean, we're going to talk in a second about Long Beach State fall sports, but high school football,
Yeah,
what do you think?
Yeah, fingers crossed for sure. Everybody's staying ready. I will give credit to the CIF, local school districts and the like, because they're not making a decision now. They're just kind of saying, let's wait and see. Let's keep it open. Let's keep hope alive. And
Yeah.
man, if this day and time is not teaching us that hope is so important, I don't know what is.
I think the main thing for everyone to keep in mind, Steve, and we get this question 50 times a day, nothing's been canceled yet. I think that's the most important thing, and that's by anyone. No high school in California yet has canceled football games. I know that the Division II Alliance in California of NCAA schools has canceled their sports, and I think when the CSU said they're probably going to go online only in the fall, that started making people really nervous. But everything we heard from the school district is that all options are on the table and that they'll do whatever they need to do. And, they're not that willing, obviously, to sort of open up what that might look like. But and we had the CIF Southern Section Commissioner, Rob Wygott, who's a Long Beach guy, on our podcast a couple of weeks ago. He said the same thing. He said, we're talking to every school district in Southern California, and what we're telling them is whatever you need to do, we will back you up. If that means changing the order of seasons so that your non-contact stuff is in the fall and your contact sports happen in January, whatever you need to do to get this stuff in. And I think what's going to be important to keep an eye on, you mentioned Arizona and Nevada and stuff. There's absolutely kids, and I've seen some parents posting about this, South Central families who are like, we have cousins in Phoenix that we're going to go stay with because they're going to let them play in August. Now, if it's me, I'd rather wait till January
Right.
if that's when the scientists are saying it's going to be safe. But I think that's going to be a huge story, and it could actually lead to, migration patterns and stuff like that. Seriously.
These are kids that would be kind of border, like the big stars. They're going to get recruited no matter what. These are almost like borderline kids who need a good next season, right?
Yeah, it's like the 7-on-7 migration. You just go to where the college coaches are. I think it must be said though, and obviously they're kids and they're resilient and all that stuff, but the summer is there specifically for football to get those kids physically and mentally ready for probably the most grueling sport on the planet. If you're talking about how much time and effort it takes to being a high school football player. So if you take the summer away, even if schools do come back in the fall, you can't just expect 100 teenagers to show up on campus on Monday and then do a scrimmage on Friday or something like that. It takes time. It takes physical preparation. And if you don't have that, really you have to move everything back because you can't start basketball in the middle of football season.
I've heard minimum 6 weeks, and that's minimum 6 weeks to get someone ready for top-notch football, which is what is played here.
I could definitely see a situation where they cut off the first half of the season, right? So all the preseason stuff when you're playing teams that aren't in your league, and then you use that time to practice, and then you come into, like, for example, in Long Beach, you come into the Moore League, Poly's playing Wilson, Milliken's playing Lakewood, you play 5 games, the top 4 teams in the league go to the playoffs, and then we're off and running.
Yeah. And I think the biggest challenge is going to be getting every school district to agree to do that at the same time so that there is a playoffs, right? And that's
could there be a possibility where certain school districts are playing and other ones aren't?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, the size of, so the way everyone knows how the NFL is structured, right? AFC, NFC, you've got your divisions. The way that high school sports are structured in California is everyone's got a league. In Long Beach, our league is the Moore League. Above the Moore League, there's the section, which because we're in Southern California, the Southern section is what people usually call the CIF. It's actually basically the Southern California, except for the LA City section. So the valley down to the northern part of San Diego and up to literally Mammoth. It's huge. It's basically half the schools in California. And it's too big for this kind of a situation, which is why I think you've seen the Southern section commissioner kind of back off and say, we'll support what people do. Because look, if you're Mammoth High School, which is in their jurisdiction, you're like, yeah, man, let's play. We don't have an outbreak problem here, and no one can get here anyway. Whereas if you're, in Long Beach, if you're in the more populous areas of Southern California, it's a different formula. So then above the section is the state, and what's happening right now is the state office and the Southern section office are both saying, kind of, you guys figure it out. We don't want to be the ones to get sued if this thing gets screwed up. If school districts go at different times, maybe we do multiple different playoffs. Maybe we don't do a playoffs this year and things end at league championships. But all that's on the table. I think JJ hit it exactly on the head. I think a best case scenario feels like, you start when the league play is supposed to start mid to late September. or early October. And the worst case scenario is you're doing just league play in January or February. But to be honest with you, yeah, I think JJ is exactly right. I just think it's increasingly unlikely we get anything other than league championships and a league schedule, and then we'll sort of see what happens with CIF after that.
Okay, now let's jump up to college. Long Beach State this week announced it's going to complete online courses. A lot of people jump to the conclusion that, okay, that means no sports. Andy Fee, the AD, said that, not so quick. Things are still up in the air. Where are we with Long Beach State right now?
Yeah, things are still up in the air. I mean, obviously, if the Big West comes in and says everything's done, then Long Beach State really doesn't have much wiggle room there. But I really do respect the way Andy Fee jumped out and said, "Hold on, we can do this. It is possible. It would obviously not look like the way it looked last year, but yeah, they're holding out hope that they can do the women's soccer, women's volleyball season and get it going in the early fall. But again, you're dealing with a situation where those teams would be practicing on campus right now in preparation for those games, and you can't do that. So everything's going to get pushed back, I think.
I think the other thing that's important for people to keep in mind is the 2020-21 school year, it's just going to look different. You know, when you ask about fall sports at Long Beach State, JJ just said that's women's soccer, women's volleyball. Well, those are two very different sports if you're talking about an infectious disease, right? Volleyball, hey, our team, we tested our team. We're over here on this side of the net. We're not going to touch you guys. We'll probably skip the handshakes for a year, you know, and I think it's the same thing when you talk about high school sports, college sports. It's a lot easier to get golf going. It's a lot easier to get tennis going than it is to get football or something where guys are spitting all over each other all the time. So I think that stuff's going to look different. Yeah.
On the kind of, because you guys hang around athletic departments, what do you think the reaction would be if they said, okay, we'll do golf and tennis and volleyball, but sorry, basketball, sorry, soccer, you're out. Do you think the athletes would say, oh, good for you, I get it? Or do you think there would be wholesale like chaos?
I think the number one question is, are the athletes whose seasons have been canceled still on scholarship? And for athletic departments like Long Beach State that are not revenue generating, you know, that might actually be a little bit easier question to answer, to be honest, than it is for USC or UCLA, where even if they don't have a great football program, their football program still generates a ton of revenue, right? The Pac-12 network is still generating a ton of revenue. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see kind of an even further separation of these haves and have-nots in terms of the mid-majors versus the so-called Power 5 football schools. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we've talked to all of the coaches at this point who had their seasons canceled in the spring, and they all said the same thing. At first, they were either pissed off or they were just like shocked and depressed. And they said, you know, within a week, they're like, yeah, what are you going to do? This is clearly much bigger than my little corner of the world. And I think, you know, I think everyone's kind of smart enough to get that. Will that be true of every high school coach, every junior college coach? You know, I don't know. But for the most part, I think people get it. And, you know, obviously all these coaches care about their kids and about their jobs, and none of them want to be doing stuff that's going to put people in, you know, harm's way or would be dangerous. So.
Hey, I want to remind everybody we're talking sports. Ask us your questions. Go ahead and send on your comments or questions. We'd be happy to answer them. I want to get to actual sports. Another thing, what do you think about this rumor that not only will we have an 80-game baseball season, but we're going to get a universal DH for finally the National League and the American League would both.
Did you have us on here just to talk about the DH?
The DH, which is a crime against nature. It's not baseball. What now? I don't want to color it either way. I don't want you to know my opinion about the horrible DH. But what do you guys think?
I'm a Dodger fan. I'm a National League fan, so I'm on board with kill the DH. But you know, to be honest with you, with baseball and the way that the baseball's popularity has been going down, they've been struggling with that stuff. I could definitely see baseball being the first sport back without fans because they just need the television revenue to be able to pay their players. Yeah. Can't pay the players, and you know what are we doing? So I could definitely see baseball doing an 80-game season starting in July, where there's nobody in the stands, and maybe they only play games in Arizona, Colorado, or whatever, where it's nice and hot. But yeah, it's
Baseball with nobody in the stands. It'll be like being a Rays fan, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, yeah, it's just going to always feel like spring training, which actually is a great experience if you've ever been to spring training, getting up close, not as many fans. So I don't know. With baseball, I think it's one of the only things that could work without fans. The fan experience in a basketball or a soccer is just so integral to the momentum of the game. I don't know if you guys saw the UFC thing last weekend.
No.
So they did a UFC fight. There was about 10 people in the stands, medical doctors and people from the state board of commission board or whatever. And I was listening to Joe Rogan talk about it, and he was like, you could hear them trying to breathe through their broken nose while they were fighting. And there was no momentum shift for the fight because there was no crowd. And that crowd noise, that crowd energy that can change a fight in just a half a second, it wasn't there. So the fights were great, but it just didn't feel right. I think with baseball, a park sport where you're kind of out there sitting down, drinking a beer, eating a hot dog, that's a little bit more conducive to not having the roar of the crowd. I just want the crack of the bat, to be honest.
I think we're beyond the aesthetic question at this point. That UFC fight, which I agree with you, is like really bizarre. I mean, it was up 30% on buys from from the one they did two before, right? I think people are so desperate for entertainment, and then I would layer on top of that Major League Baseball is going through what's going to be a really messy CBA renegotiation. One thing at the bedrock of every CBA deal in pro sports is it's all based on games being played. So I think what you saw, especially with the NBA guys, is there was this initial, like LeBron came out immediately when they were first talking about this stuff a couple months ago. It was like, I'm not playing without fans. That's who I play for, right? Well, every major star in the NBA is on a conference call with each other 2 days ago saying, we got to play because I have teammates who, I mean, rightfully, why would they be prepared for not getting half of their money this year? They signed a contract and there has never been half of an NBA season getting canceled. But they're hearing from everyone else on their teams like, hey, I didn't put money away for this. I mean, I thought I'm in my 5 years of my life, 10 years of my life where I'm going to be making money. And, some of these guys on the lower ends of those contracts, it might seem ridiculous if you're getting laid off of a minimum wage job. Some of those guys really are living paycheck to paycheck.
It's true.
And they're not planning on a 2-month disruption in their salary. So everything that we've seen now is suddenly there's a pressure from within the players unions. It's like, we got to get back out there. Even the NBA is now talking really seriously about how do we finish the regular season so that it's not just half of the league that's getting paid. You know what I mean? I think that financial necessity will end up kind of driving sports into weird places over the next couple months.
But you're right. We're all pining for it. We're all jonesing for it. But at the same time, I would much rather have a complete 2020, 2021 season for any sport. Complete, right, looks right, feels right, than trying to hustle and finish something in 2020. You can't sacrifice the next season in order to try to finish something that is already ruined.
I think we'll see that though. I think we'll see they'll finish this, and then I think it might be back-to-back 80-game seasons for Major League Baseball. But I think the NBA absolutely is the space before Christmas doesn't exist to the NBA this year.
It should never have existed. This, we talk about this all the time.
Right.
Basketball should start on Christmas.
I think they're going to finish a regular season and a playoff series, even if it's a best of fives or something. And then I think they take 2 months off. And then I think we're starting next season on Christmas.
What do they do though? Do they travel these guys? You got to put them in like Epcot Center or something and just lock them in their hotel rooms and then just play the game all on the same court.
Mark Cuban's calling it the Hotel California model, which I like quite a bit. We're bringing you in, and then you're going to stay here for 2 months.
Maybe this could be good for Long Beach. If they need to go someplace where there aren't a lot of people, they could do the whole thing out at the Queen Mary. Just kidding. Hey, speaking of basketball seasons that are done, The Last Dance ends this weekend. When it began with a big bang. Then we got this really isn't the true story. This is a story of Michael Jordan. And now we're getting, this kind of celebration of the bully, right? That we've seen in politics, we see in culture, and now we see in sports. The idea that, to be successful, you have to be this horrible, mean, pushing kind of person. And read a great piece in The Nation the other day. They brought up Bill Russell, that Bill Russell was actually a very kind, empathetic teammate. And of course, Bill Russell's the greatest winner in American sports history, 11 championships in the NBA, 2 in the NCAA. Now that we've got to the end of The Last Dance, what do you think about it? What it has kind of told us, and what do you think about its message?
Well, let me first say, Bill Russell, great guy, but their coach, Red Auerbach, is classically one of the biggest jerks of all time.
Sure.
Every team needs a jerk. It doesn't need to be your best player. It doesn't need to be the guy riding the bench. Every team needs a jerk. Every team needs a follower. Every team needs a rah-rah guy. Like, there are roles that need to be filled. So I understand what you're saying, but I thought it was funny when everybody's like, well, okay, so that's the only way you lead? It's like, no, that's not the only way you lead. There's many different ways to lead. And there's been many different examples of very different types of leaders. I mean, who was the jerk on those Spurs teams that kept winning all those titles? David Robinson? Tim Duncan? No.
I think to JJ's point, to me, the worst thing, JJ and I are both 90s kids. So we grew up in this ethos, if you're not punching Steve Kerr in the face, you're not trying, right? And I think the two of us, we've been working together now for 13 years. We've had to sort of check ourselves on that with each other. You can be rigorous with yourself, but don't be a dick to the people. Don't be at Kinko's yelling at your fellow employee, right? We're not meeting our quota. We have to expect greatness or whatever.
Right.
But I actually think it's been really destructive to sort of American sports, to be honest with you, that this sort of hyper masculinized idea of the alpha leader is sort of celebrated without any examination, right? I mean, look at LeBron James. To me, an incredible, you don't even need to go back to Bill Russell. You look at LeBron James, who wins through facilitation, right?
Yes.
And gets criticized for it because so many talking heads have sort of well, Michael Jordan's the standard. And we could look at Kobe Bryant and say, okay, he was the same mold. Maybe he wasn't quite as good, whatever. Yeah. But then when someone comes along like LeBron, who's like, no, I like my life. And I actually grew up in enormous hardship. And I have a wife that I love and kids that I love. And I'm happy. And I like playing basketball. And it makes me happy to play basketball. And people criticize him for that, you know?
I'm so about Steve Kerr. Mike just said it. And we talked about this on the podcast this week as well. I want everybody in the world to be like Steve Kerr in that he sticks up for himself. He stands up to the bully, pushes him, takes a punch, walks away
in the face,
and then is man enough to answer the phone, accept the apology, move forward, and make the team better because of it. If we had more Steve Kerrs in the world, we'd be in a better spot.
And a lot of facial injuries. Hey, before we go, we have just about a minute left. This is the first weekend where people can kind of get out a little bit. And JJ, you kind of waxed poetic about a little trip you had. Tell us what you did.
Yeah, man. Golf courses are open in Long Beach. It's very different. You got to wear a mask when you're checking in. There's only a couple mats at the driving range. They've screwed the pins into the hole, so you don't take the pin out. The ball just kind of rolls up against the lip, and then you take it out, so nobody touches the pin or anything like that. No ball washers, no garbage cans. So it's different. But I got to tell you, man, I had no idea how much I missed it. I'd taken a long walk, breaking a sweat, talking to strangers, competing. It was so good for the soul. And I actually talked to a doctor at Big Rec who was driving up to play because he really likes the course. And he was just like, this is great for morale. Just being able to go out, even people who don't play golf, driving by the golf course and seeing people out there, it's already a socially distanced sport. So it is probably one of the safer things you could do outside in terms of athletics. It was, it was incredible. I think I'm going to go back today.
Hey, since the thing was screwed in, the flag, how many holes in one did you lose? 3 or 4?
That's what. Yeah, exactly. The gimme putts, the circle for the gimme putts got a little bit larger. But we actually did make that joke. It was like, it would be today that I would hit the pin, and then it wouldn't count. But whatever. I actually played one of the greatest rounds of my life. The first.
Did you really?
Yeah, the first round back. I don't know why. I guess I forgot all my bad habits.
Yes. Stress breeds focus. That's what it was.
Yeah. I always find when I don't play golf for a long time and I have no expectations, I'm great. And then the next time after that, when I have all expectations, that's when I just curse that game as the stupid
golf,
game that it is.
Writing, basketball, really anything in life, it follows that cycle for me. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey guys, we're at the end here. Appreciate you guys coming by. This was a ton of fun. hang with us this coming Monday. We'll have another live chat for you. Want to say thank you to JJ and Mike and everybody else. Have a nice weekend. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.